Welcome back to What's New in the Lou with Alexis Zotos, presented by Kaldi's Coffee and recorded right here at Bucket List Podcast Studios. This is your can't miss weekly podcast, helping you stay in the know in St. Louis. We're talking the best new restaurants, the can't miss events, and of course, the people that continue to make our community the best place to live and visit. And at the end of each episode, I am going to share a weekly calendar with you so you know exactly what to do this week and you don't get FOMO when you see it all on social media the following Monday. So this week's episode really combines two of my favorite things, cheese and wine. We are talking about the wine and cheese place with owner Vijay Shroff. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Alexis. Appreciate it.
You have a really interesting sort of trajectory, law to entrepreneurship in the food and beverage world. What's your backstory here?
So I grew up in St. Louis. I moved away for college and grad school. Law school was here in St. Louis at WashU. I then practiced as a corporate attorney in New York City for about a decade. Got married, had a kid, decided to move back to St. Louis.
As many people
do. I took a job as in-house counsel for a company whose North and South American headquarters are in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, I became the general counsel for that company. And then after that, they asked me somewhat unbelievably to run one of the divisions of that company. So I went from lawyer to business person. And I really did enjoy that transition. I think I felt more at home being a business leader than I did being the head of a legal department. That said, I think I did have an entrepreneurial streak, still do, and I had the opportunity to buy wine and cheese in 2019. So not an industry I was particularly familiar with.
What made you take the leap then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a combination of things, and I was just for me, I was at the right stage of life.
Mm-hmm.
I was just about 40, maybe I was 40, I think, and it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I've saved up to do this, and if I fail, I can still go back to what I was
You're
doing
not going to be on the
before.
streets. Yeah.
And let's see if the grass is greener.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't looked back. I really enjoyed it. And what I bought was a brand and a business. Wine and Cheese was founded in 1982, was family owned, still family owned, just a different family as of 2019. And I knew it as a child growing up. My dad taking me there to buy gourmet food stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I still like to think that it's the one liquor store in town where people, don't mind bringing their kids.
Yeah, because there's a lot more than just wine, liquor, beer.
Yeah.
There are those specialty items that you guys really curate.
Yeah. So we started as the cheese place. Wine came around later, mainly because in the 80s, imported wine, mainly wines from France, didn't have a lot of distribution in Missouri, but the customers of the cheese place were also the ones who enjoyed that type of wine. And so they asked the then owner, can you get me these products? And the owner said, of course I can, through distribution. And quickly it became the go-to place for fine wine in St. Louis. And then the name change happened. And then similarly, just consumer driven, customer driven, we've expanded our inventory to include what is the state's largest, at least broadest collection of spirits. I'm certain also more wine bottles than anyone else has as well. So we have a lot of breadth. We try to cater to every customer at every price point, hopefully every region. Our stores, if you've been there, aren't huge and cavernous, but they are packed with product. And more importantly, they're packed with people who know about the product.
Really friendly staff. I mean, I think that's one of the big things that sets you guys apart, that you can go in, maybe feel a little overwhelmed because there is a lot there, but somebody is right there to sort of help direct you towards the aisle of what you're looking for, or to try something new, or to just find an old favorite.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that's what we try to do. We really try to not be kind of like this forbidding place where people feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
Um, you know, it and my litmus test is do I feel comfortable as someone who's not from that industry, who doesn't know everything? Would I feel comfortable walking in and asking for help?
Hmm.
We don't want to have an air of exclusivity. We don't want to uh, feel like have anyone feel like their choice is inadequate.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone likes what they like,
Yeah, yeah.
and we're just there to kind of help them find out what that is and try new things and be there to help as much as we can or as little as we can.
Hmm. You guys have a relatively new location in Creve Coeur. You
Mhm.
moved. What's that expansion been like to a new location? And as you kind of continue to
Sure.
meet the needs of the community in St. Louis.
Sure. So we've been in Creve Coeur since I think this is our third Creve Coeur location since the 80s. Um, we moved simply to be closer to Olive. We were on
Hmm.
New Balance, and we're now just closer to Olive. We're at Olive and New Balance now. The upgrade was for many reasons: better parking, a bit more traffic, but also what I wanted for that location was a bit more space to do more events
Mm.
and tastings. The old location, we had just outgrown it, and we needed a little bit of room to help better engage our customers and have a better shopping experience. It's been really great. The Creve Coeur market is really really thriving. Lots of great small businesses there. A lot of people moving to Creve
Hmm.
Coeur, um, and we just enjoy serving that clientele and hope to do so for another 3 decades at least. Yeah.
What is your favorite part about sort of that in-store shopping experience? What sets you apart from, either other liquor stores around town
Yeah.
or, a big box grocery store where people might find it slightly more convenient? What sets you guys apart?
Great question. So yeah, it's definitely more convenient for a lot of people to buy wine or spirits or beer at the grocery store because everyone is going to the grocery store probably on a weekly basis. And we have to answer the question of why take time out of your
Mhm.
busy week to come visit us um, when you could already get it at your local grocer. I think one. Um, to be a little bit plain here, we're cheaper.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
So
That's a winning point right there.
that helps. But also I think, and I don't want to negative sell any competitor of mine. I can just say that we really do pride ourselves on customer service, and I think a convenience buy doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get good customer service.
Mhm,
I don't go to a lot of grocery stores and see someone in the wine aisles that can help me
mhm.
pick something out. Um,
Especially if you're looking for that, specific something that goes with a dish you're making
exactly.
or, hey, look, I'm looking for a special occasion
Yeah.
bottle. That's a person that's sort of like you want that person in the industry who knows what they're talking about.
Absolutely. And also the breadth of product. I think we have the luxury of space, whereas at a grocer or a smaller liquor store, they just have space for maybe um, the best known brands.
Mhm.
Whereas we can experiment with our selection, bring in lesser known brands, but that the challenge to us too, because we then have to help educate our customers as to why this might be interesting to them.
Mhm.
But that's the kind of customer we tend to get, someone who is looking to try something else. I like this. What else would I like?
Mhm.
Or I'm having dinner for 10 people. You know, let's walk around together and let's pick something for first course, second course, dessert.
That's gotta be a fun
it is fun.
guest for one
Yeah,
of your, employees, that kind of
e-
challenge.
exactly, exactly. And that's just what I think it sets us apart. I don't know where else you can do that. Again, not trying to negative sell I don't go to my competitors, so I couldn't tell you. But but yeah, I think that's what at least draws our customers in.
Yeah. And not only from a wine perspective, but you mentioned the spirits. So you guys have an incredible selection
Mhm.
of spirits. What excites you right now in the store? What are What are you reaching for? What are you excited about that's in the store?
Oh, I'm not that adventurous, to be quite honest. I tend to drink red wine. We're actually doing a really cool series of bottlings with the Missouri a whiskey maker.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his name is Demetrius Kane, and have you met
Fantastic. Yeah, he's
Demetrius?
wonderful.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
And he owns Nobleton's Distillery. It's about, I think, 90 miles west of here, 90 minutes or so, maybe not miles. Um,
A
and
worthwhile drive.
it's fantastic. Go see Demetrius at Nobleton's. But he and I had talked years ago about. I think a lot of stores like mine will do single barrel picks, which have
Mhm.
become very popular because you're getting the yield of just one barrel of whiskey, and you're seeing how that expression is different than just its neighboring barrel. And for those people who know, it can be very, very different. Um, but what Demetrius and I wanted to do was to say, okay, we're going to do this consistently. We're going to have 5 releases a year,
Mm.
a spring, a summer, a fall, and a
That are
winter
exclusive to you
that are
guys.
exclusive to us. And they're going to repeat every year so people can collect them. Uh, he's allowed me to call it Theodore Rex. My son's name is Teddy. So it's just
Oh,
after him.
love
But
that.
but that's been really fun because it's been creative. So for me,
How did you guys connect? How do you go about sort of
yeah.
like building those relationships, especially with creators in our region?
Uh, so I have to give kudos to my staff, who really do seek out these people, and these creative makers. Uh,
Makers, that's the word I was looking
yeah,
for. Creators works too, but
yeah.
makers is the word I was
I was
looking for.
searching myself. But here in St. Louis and Missouri, it really means distillers and brewers, right?
Mhm.
Because those are the biggest alcohol industries. I mean, we have wine too, um, but we have a really growing scene in whiskey, and then I think our craft beer scene is the best in the nation.
Mhm.
So kudos to my staff. For I think we were the first folks to have Demetrius's products on the shelves.
Nice.
I think we were the first folks to do a single barrel with him. I think very similarly, we were the first folks to do Side Project. And in fact, Side Project has a special bottling. For those who don't know, Side Project is probably the
I
best
mean,
craft brewer in the nation.
yeah, hands
And
down.
we're lucky to have them as part of St. Louis. But we were the first to really support them to the extent that every year they do a special release. I would say for us, but it's really for my general manager, Paul Hayden. And the release is called Merci. Of course, it means thank you in
Mhm.
French, and that's their way of saying thank you to us, which is just really humbling and awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, especially as someone who's been in this business for a while, you've gotten to see these local brewers, these distillers that grow in ways that maybe they never thought that they could do if they hadn't had opportunity to get on a shelf space like yours.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, the brands they're building are fantastic and strong, and any way we can support them, we love to. I think for a lot of for Corey over at Side Project and Demetrius at Nobleton's, as they wish to expand, they definitely need a platform. It's because they're businesses. They
Mhm.
can't run. We all want to run on hope and dreams, but it does take some revenue too. And so to start to build that revenue base, I think mostly they have to start local, and we're happy to help introduce them to our customers.
Kaldi's Coffee has been proudly roasting in St. Louis since 1994. Guided by a commitment to quality, service, and community, Kaldi strives to make every cup a moment of discovery. And get this, thanks to the support of their St. Louis community and fans across the country, they were named USA Today's #1 coffee chain in 2024. Visit Kaldi'sCoffee.com to find your nearest cafe, shop coffee for home, or even book a free tour and cupping at their roastery. Follow the goat to your next great coffee experience. Enjoy the rest of the episode. What's that like from a St. Louis perspective to sort of see that camaraderie, that idea of, rising tides
Yeah.
in the ships, whatever that analogy
Right,
is?
right. Um, I mean, it's really gratifying to know that we can be part of that ecosystem. I like my business because we're not too small and we're not too big, and we can be nimble and do things like that. I don't have to stock, you know, things that we don't want to stock.
Mhm.
I don't have to say yes to distributors all the time. Sometimes I do, but we can and because we have such a loyal fan base, I call them fan base, but customer base. Um, that allows us to take swings as
Mm.
well because they trust us. You know, I know that if my team believes in a product, a new product, um, they'll get people to try it. And the distillers and brewers know that.
Mm.
They're not taking, they're taking, they're not taking a risk by coming to us with a new product. Uh, as far as are we going to put our effort behind to sell it? If we like it and we think it's great, we will. And we've got, for a local company, we've got a very large email and social media following, which in 2025 is really important. Um, but that's a lot of organic. Building of those lists and those followers through a lot of content, and through a lot of genuine contact, which I think right now we are in this period where I think people can tell what's genuine and what's
Mhm.
not pretty quickly.
Are you guys still seeing the sort of the demand we were seeing for special releases,
Hmm.
especially in whether it's the craft beer world, the
Hmm.
spirits world? Things were getting a little crazy there for a
Hmm.
while with
Hmm.
special releases.
Yeah,
Do you guys still see that?
I think it's plateaued.
Yeah.
Um, you know, beer and whiskey are a little different. Beer is you want it fresh, so there's almost always going to be a new release. It
Hmm.
has to be to feed the ecosystem,
Yeah.
right? Because no one, well, I shouldn't say that. So because some beers are age worthy, but most beers, like IPAs, they people want them fresh, right?
Hmm.
So there's almost always a new release. Um, uh, I think that a lot of the brewers have matured to the point that they've figured out what their core
Hmm.
labels are, so they might have the same 5, 6, 7 in rotation,
Hmm.
but they're creative, and they're always trying to do something different. I think with distillers, um, most of whom are still in Kentucky, there's just a huge supply.
Hmm.
Um, you
It's
know,
not as the
the
scarcity as.
scarcity. The thing is with whiskey, you're at least 2 years for a straight whiskey, right? And people, the more time it spends, most people will say the better it is, and therefore the higher price it can achieve. So if we rewind to 5 years ago, when bourbon was really booming and taking off, you had a lot of new distillers on the market and a lot of old, existing distillers, great distillers, say, to meet this demand, I've got to put more juice in barrels
Hmm.
for 2025.
And now we're here.
And now we're here, and they all had the same playbook. And, we're just seeing it's great for the consumer.
Hmm.
There's a lot of great bourbon, great whiskeys out there. I think they're going to become more available. I think um, the most sought after ones, the ones that people will probably, stab their aunt for, um, if not their mother, will still be very rare and very, very sought after. But there's, if you come into our stores and you look at the whiskey walls, hundreds
Hmm.
of whiskeys, hundreds and hundreds. So there's not really a bad bottle between them, So
Mm-hmm.
people like to experiment and collect. Um, but I think that the rarity for 95% of the products is going down. I don't mind that. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Do you have any crazy stories from some of those releases?
You know, I I don't only because we do it in such a way. that it's all through email.
Yeah.
So,
If people are fighting, they're fighting it through the
yeah,
email.
you know, if I like hit a bottle in the stores and just said at 9 a.m. we're gonna, you know, I'd have to call the cops. It would be like the worst version of Black Friday possible.
Right.
You know, but I like the fact that
More
people won't,
people can
you
get
know,
access to what they want.
you know, that said, I think that, you know, we've got a lot of supply and I see demand. It doesn't have a lot of room to run,
Right.
you know.
Because there's a shifting world when it comes to alcohol right now
Yeah.
and alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
Those are the headlines we are seeing
Yep.
across media right now is people are drinking less. I think I read a stat last week saying that only 50-something% of Americans say that they drink alcohol right now, which is, I guess, the lowest it's ever been. As someone who this is their bread and butter,
Right.
when you hear those stats, what goes through your mind?
Good for them. You know, I drink less than I did, but I'm also older than I once was. So age tends to play a part.
It does play a part.
You know, I can only say for our business where we're situated, because you know we do tend to the higher end of things. Our customers have, you know, I can't generalize too much, but our customers have drank in moderation. I think they're those drinkers who are drinking high quality.
Right.
And so just from our numbers, we haven't seen that, you know, mega trend affect our business. Anecdotally, you know, coming out of COVID, that really accelerated a flight to quality, if you will, over quantity, because people were like, okay, I'm going to treat myself. I can't go out to dinner, so I'll spend a few more bucks on a wine, or I will learn how to make a craft cocktail. And those ingredients, you know, they're not cheap, but they are cheaper than, you know, and that's another trend we have with economic uncertainty. They are cheaper and the cost of food, you know, they are cheaper at home than they are out.
Yeah.
So I just feel like there's been a flight to quality over quantity. I think that's a trend that's good for my particular business. I haven't seen a downturn in business as a result of people drinking less. And I think that also kind of speaks to, yes, people are drinking less, but people are more conscious of what they're drinking, what they're putting into their body. And one thing I'm hopeful for is with a focus on, you know, cleaner foods, natural foods, non-processed foods, and drinks. People tend to forget about the drinks, but there's you know, other than orange juice, there's not a lot of, you know, wine is probably the next, you know, things like wine and tequila are not processed foods. They have one ingredient.
Right.
You know?
They might take time to create them, but the processing is just part of what's creating wine versus it being a process versus ultra process.
That's right. And so, you know, beer is made from grain, whiskey is made from grain. All of these things there's nothing really new under the alcohol sun, right? We've been making these things for thousands of years. I'm not saying that they're healthy, you know. Use at your own risk. I think everyone can make their own decisions. But I think that trend to you know, less processed things is favorable for my industry. I'm not a huge fan of canned drinks, just because, you know, if you look at the label, it's the same thing you know many people do with food, and a lot of times you don't know what's in these things. And I also think people like the story behind a lot of these products, and you mentioned it, like, you know, the first ingredient in most of the things is, you know, wine or grapes or agave or barley, and then the other thing is time and a maker, right? You know, those aren't ingredients, but that's a story. You know, these are real, thoughtful products for the most part, and I think people like that.
And you know, you have a lot of local products, locally made, locally crafted products. But of course, there are lots of wonderful international items on your shelves, which are impacted, as you mentioned, by economic uncertainty, tariffs. What impact does that have not only for you, but on the consumer who is maybe hesitant right now to pick up their favorite French bottle of wine because
Yeah.
they think it's going to cost them a lot more?
So I'll stick to the facts. My prices, about half of the items in my store come from Europe. That means I am seeing a price increase on my cost of 15% now.
Mm.
That's on cheese, that's on wine, that's on scotch, really anything that comes from Europe. I can't keep up. I think there's
I was
still
going to say it changes so
a
often.
tariff on Mexican products, meaning tequila and mezcal. But those are the big buckets of tariff impact. Um, and so we have two choices. One, because I don't know, I will disclose this. My margins aren't large enough to
Hmm.
eat a 15% price increase. I can't do it. No one in my industry can. So, we have the choice of either not carrying a particular product, or passing it on to the consumer. Now, it's not an all or nothing thing. If what was a $20 bottle, with the impact of tariffs, we say, well, we just don't think we could sell it for more than 20 bucks.
Hmm.
It's really the value is 20 and
That's
not
what,
more.
right.
That's going to be one we probably pass on.
Mm.
Um, you know, and just from what I know of the industry, there's no one in the United States liquor industry, whether it's a maker or a distributor or a retailer, that thinks that these are good for the domestic industry, because your French wine drinker is not going to say, okay, I will now drink. They're not interchangeable.
Right.
Your Scotch drinker, a lot of Scotch drinkers who don't like bourbon. So but as an ecosystem of products, I think it's like when you go to that corner that has every car dealer. There's a reason for that, right? It's because all those car dealers understand that they're better in the same basic shopping district.
Hmm.
People want that choice, and it increases visits to each and every one of those dealerships, because someone on a Saturday can go and see every type of car they could possibly be interested in. And that's what a lot of liquor stores are, right? The variety, and it would be a shame to not be able to do that. We'll continue to provide that variety. I think we're just going to see what makes sense, and whether we can, we think there's enough value in the bottle to justify the cost increase.
Despite all the changes in this industry, do you ever stop and think I should get back into law?
No.
You're happy with this sort of pivot, and
Yeah.
what's the biggest lesson you've taken that you like to share with people on that pivots are there, that you
Yeah.
can change that course, whether it's getting into, the wine and cheese industry, or
Yeah.
whether it's a different dream?
Yeah. It's not easy. And you have to have a lot of support. One, my family was very supportive of it. Um, you know, Two, I had a little bit of a parachute. I have to admit that, in that I had something to go back to. But if you find yourself in the right stage of life, and you feel like you can do it, without betting the house, literally, um, go for it. As lawyers are notoriously conservative in risk taking. So, for me, I really had to talk myself into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of these changes. I think it's helpful to reflect: are you being pushed, or are you being pulled?
Mm.
Are you just saying, I'm done with what I'm doing, and so I must do something different? Or are you saying, I really want to do this, and even though I'm okay where I am at, I'm getting pulled? And I think if it's more the former, the push, rather than the latter, you really need to find something that pulls you, because if you're just being pushed, then I think you can potentially be looking, grasping a little bit. Whereas if you found something that you're passionate about, and for me, it wasn't wine and cheese. For me, I really wanted to run a small
It was the
business.
business aspect, yeah.
I wanted to do that. I think you got to be pulled. And a mentor of mine kind of helped me frame things in that push pull
I love that.
dynamic of, are you being pushed or are you being pulled? If you're being pushed because you don't like where you are, well, before you move on, see what pulls you.
Mm-hmm. And if you follow that poll and you can celebrate, you've got something for them to cheers with.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
very good.
And as always, we are going to end each episode with a look at what to do around St. Louis this week so you can stay in the know of all the can't miss events. Here's a look at your weekly calendar. This weekend is Maddie, Music at the Intersection, a huge music festival in the Grand Arts District. It goes from Friday, September 12th through the 14th. The Green Tree Festival in Kirkwood also kicks off this weekend from Friday, September 12th through the 14th. At Eckert's, Jack's Lighted Trail, a brand new immersive Halloween experience, opens Saturday, September 12th. The Magic House's Fall Festival is Saturday, September 13th, and the St. Louis Renaissance Festival kicks off this weekend, opening Saturday, September 13th. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you can always know what's new in the Lou.